So, I'm sure you've heard the quote that behind every great man there is a great woman, but oftentimes this great woman is always referred to, but never given the chance to stand alone and express why. Her energy, her essence, and her intuition and her opinion actually drives certain masculine forces to greatness. And in this video, I want to discuss being a muse and the pros and cons that come with it, and different muses throughout history that have inspired me and I believe us all. So, if you're new, thank you for clicking on this video, and if you're not, welcome back to the channel. And I want to get into a couple of muses that you may have heard of and some that you may not have heard of. So, a muse is defined as a person or personified force who is the source of inspiration for a creative artist. Now, there are so many different women in media that have inspired me, and I definitely want to share a few of these women with you guys. Now, some of these stories, the women were definitely siphoned for their energy. So, some of these stories are going to be a bit of a warning, but the rest of them, I find that some of the women in their own way found a way to flip the script and, become the master instead of just the muse. So if you're interested in stuff like that, sit back and enjoy. So first on the list is someone who is extremely iconic. Her name is Tina Turner, aka Anime Bullet, and I think a lot of us know her story and how she was just so beautiful and so talented, and not just her relationship, but a lot of the people, business wise around her. Not only did they siphon her energy, they tried to break her spirit and just make her feel like she wasn't the woman who she was. And I think this is a fallback from being a muse, in my personal opinion, only because when you're so incredible, a lot of people try to turn you into something that you're not so that they can feel comfortable, with your greatness. And I see that in a lot of the relationships nowadays with these beautiful female celebrities who are with these guys that are clearly beneath them by their own standards. And a lot of people will try to bring you down to their level. And we already know her story and how she dealt with that. So, yes, definitely a beautiful, iconic woman. And her story is a warning to a lot of women who are incredibly talented. So, up next, Erykah Badu. Now, this woman, she has her head on strong. She is incredibly influential, incredibly gorgeous, incredibly talented, incredibly creative. And I believe that she's more in control of her influence than a lot of the other women on this list, unfortunately, because I've realized when instead of someone siphoning her energy, she allows certain men to be inspired by her and to imprint on her. And I think about her baby daddies, how after they got with her, their music changed. A lot of people started paying attention to them more. They were in tune with their masculine side and a lot of stuff like that. And this isn't really just my personal opinion. These men personally thank her for her creative genius and her essentially imprinting on them and teaching them everything she knows and how that can really change a man. So I think that her story is a little bit more different, but I also want to get into some of the other women who, had a really hard time finding ways to market their beauty and monetize their talents without allowing the industry to completely suck them dry. Another person I think of is Biggie and how he marketed Kim with this image that was like a male fantasy, and she feels like some of the stuff was her and some of the stuff wasn't. And the problem with being marketed as a muse is that once you become something, it's kind of hard for people to see you as something else. And he really did push that sexy image. And then here she is, thinking, all right, I'm this look. I got all of this attention just for him to, be with someone else that looks completely different from her. And a lot of people feel like that's what started Kim's comparisons to herself and other women, and a lot of insecurity and why she looks the way she looks now, which is unfortunate. Unless she likes it, which is great for her. But yeah, I can see how if you're the muse of this guy and here he is putting you on this pedestal and telling you you're this and you're that, and being with someone the complete opposite of you. And I feel like some women have experienced that. where you're talking to someone, you might not have even dated the guy. You could have just went on one date and he's saying, "Oh, you're my type," da da da, and you're not. Like he dates complete opposite people from you. It's kind of like jarring. So I could see how that could confuse someone, and that's like the problem with being amused is that it's not a permanent situation. It's usually a temporary space. And a lot of women have a hard time letting that go, going from being a sex symbol to just a woman. A lot of women have a hard time dealing with that. Another pro of becoming a muse is that, and this is something that I've personally done. I did a couple videos on like how to be a muse and the process of that and how it feels. But one of the things that I like to do is use divinity as divination and just embracing your inner feminine. And it's so much more than just, hair and makeup. It's genuine vulnerability, it's genuine sensuality, it's giving all of yourself, and being vulnerable and real with another person enough where they can actually capture your essence and pour it into their art, and other people are compelled by it. So that is a very beautiful part of that process.
Okay, all set.
Give me one of those laughs again, Joss. That's great, yeah. Give me some innocence now. That's great. Right down the barrel. And some doe eye looks. Beautiful. Now mischievous. Play with the camera. Okay, pure sex now. That's good. Give me vulnerable. Beautiful. And now emotional. That's beautiful.
Pros of being a muse, in my personal opinion, I feel like it comes from being able to influence people without the responsibility of marketing or producing your actual self. A lot of models, they're scouted when they're really young, or when they're just, being themselves before like the world really gets to you, like just living in your natural essence. And they're modeled, in inspiration of different ideas that usually men are designing. And the only thing with that is you're able to get your face out there, but then you can get like, I think actors call it being, I forget what the word is, but it's basically when actors are, I think it's called typecast. Yeah. When actors are typecasted, it means that, well, the look that you have, it only goes with this type of stuff. You wouldn't be marketable in this area. So that's the only problem with being scouted and, put with a certain image to your face. And a lot of women, I think about Twiggy and how she was also a model, a very thin woman in the 70s. And how, because she was so thin, people wanted her to do certain things that she didn't really want to do, and how that can come back on your reputation years later. And, that's one of the downfalls of it. But another pro from being a muse is being able to be seen for yourself. Now, based off what I said before, if you're dealing with someone who is, seeing your beauty, seeing your talent, and wanting to help you produce an image for yourself for the world to see, but they blur your image, that's where a lot of the trauma and regret comes from with a lot of women who are inspirations or muses for these men. But if you find yourself with someone that respects your image and understands your image, I think about like Nicki Minaj and how she had this really animated style, and a lot of rappers they didn't really talk like that. I think maybe Kanye West, but a lot of other rappers they were pretty serious when it comes to rap. And how when she came out, she really inspired him to like be more fun and be more silly, and more importantly, he allowed her to have her own creative freedom when it came to her music, and that's why her music is a Nicki Minaj song when you hear it. So there are some artists and male artists who were able to find their muses and allow them to express themselves and not tell them who they are. So that can also be a plus. But another pro from being a muse is immortality. And we saw that statue in New York, the 12-foot statue. And I think the reason why it was so jarring for some people is because when you usually see a statue, it's these beautiful, statues and whatnot of these gorgeous women that are just like stamped in history as sex symbols and idols of beauty. And a lot of women, they can enjoy that, but there's also a price that comes with that. And that is comparison. So I know a lot of women, especially in the Hollywood industry, they're compared to their older selves. I don't know if you guys seen the movie The Substance, but you should check it out. It's basically about an older woman. She's an actress, and a younger version of her is offered a role. But she wants to get the role herself, of course, because she's the perfect person for the role. She's just older. So she takes this substance and it makes her young and whatnot. It's an interesting film. But what made it really funny is that I don't forget what the award was, but it was an award show for film and movies. And there was another movie called Honor. It's also a really good film, but both of these films were up for an award. And the film Honor had a younger actress, and this person ended up winning the award over. And I think the person that played in The Substance, she's a very famous actress. I forgot her name, but a lot of people felt like it should have went to her, but because of her age, she just wasn't eligible for it. So that's another thing that muses go through. Once people see you as this beautiful image, the moment you don't look like that anymore, it's like all of that hard work is taken away. Another thing, and this is one of the main things that inspires women to be muses outside of like immortality, is just being able to influence art and culture and being the face of something, being a sex symbol. Or I think about like Dita Von Teese. She's a pinup, like I think it's called like pinup model, where they do like 1950s lingerie and stuff like that, and how she kind of owns that era in her look. Like she looks like a black and white portrait every time you see her because her looks are so muted and just so campy. So a lot of the times you can influence new culture and start a wave, or you can even bring back certain cultures like a renaissance, and that's very interesting when you're a trend starter or a muse. Yeah, but some of the cons to being a muse are being objectified. And I know this seems really obvious for people that are sex symbols, but even for people that aren't necessarily sensual or have like a promiscuous, vibe about them, just having your essence alone, your intellectual property, intangible pieces of labor that you've put towards something, that can really take a toll on you. And if you're being seen as, a moneymaker and not a human being, that's where people start to trade in themselves and sell their soul and, stuff like that. Another con of being a muse is not being able to outgrow yourself or outgrow the typecasting that people have put onto you. And this can be people comparing you to your old self, even not even just celebrities or symbols go through this. Like if you're a woman and maybe you were into, something that was a hobby, or maybe you're part of a certain lifestyle and you no longer do that, people will always relate that back to you. It's like they can't help but, not accept the fact that you're an ever changing person. You're allowed to transform, you're allowed to evolve. And if you happen to be a public figure, it's a lot worse. So, another con is not, being able to face yourself. I think when it comes to actors and models, or anyone that has to make their self their own brand, that takes a lot because you have to be self-aware, you have to, actualize yourself, you have to be able to sell yourself without selling your soul in a way, and it can be a thin line to walk. So another thing about being a muse that isn't the greatest is being replaced. And sometimes when someone replaces you, it's just because maybe you've been in that business too long, or you've been the face of something too long, and it's really not personal, and you should just bow down and pass the torch. But nowadays, when it comes to media and stuff like that, you know, it's like the popcorn era, like it's like microwavable era. Like people aren't becoming icons and it girls how they used to. Like, do you know you have 30 minutes? Like, your time is up. Like, a lot of women, and not even just women, men, musicians, whatever, they're not leaving that stamp of becoming like icons and stars, Like, there's no superstars of today's era. So, people are being replaced constantly. And another con that I can think of is not being seen as a human being and instead being seen as like a concept. I know that Lady Gaga, Nicki Minaj, there were other women who felt like a lot of people dehumanized them and didn't see them as human beings, all because of their artistic creativity. And that's a funny, thing that a lot of muses have to deal with. And there's something else that I really feel like is kind of the worst thing about being a muse, and that is your image or your essence, or even just your creative collaboration. Like, let's say if you write a song, right? You're a songwriter, and someone tells you, "Oh, we're gonna change a couple lyrics. We're gonna put it in this movie. It's gonna be great." And then they essentially like defile your image or misrepresent your mission, or completely change something that you were really passionate about, that you put your soul into, and just defile it. And as an artist, as a writer, that's like the worst thing ever, is giving your baby to someone, something that you basically birthed and created yourself, and watching someone like defile it or misrepresent it, or twist it into something that it wasn't meant to be, especially if it's the opposite of something that you believe in. A lot of artists, especially when it comes to AI, and I think about SAG-AFTRA or whatever it's called, like all the actors that were protesting. And, a lot of people, they don't like the way their image is being used, and they feel like it's being used in ways that don't represent their character. But when you're the face of a brand or a product, you're really not in control of that. You're always going to be considered property of the public. I want you to check out this clip from the Ray Charles film and tell me if you notice anything.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Keep that leg. Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more, no more, no more, more. Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more.
That's right, hit the road, Jack.
That's it,
And don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more. What you say? Hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more.
So I don't know if you caught that, but in the film, he is using even her anger, even her negative energy, to fuel inspiration for a song, which became one of his most well-known songs. And there's nothing wrong with men being inspired by women, but it's never fair when a woman makes a man her muse and wants to turn around and turn his pain into her profit. And I want to play you guys this clip from Corinne Steffens just so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about.
I have to admit, I read your book from cover to cover, and I know that you named a lot of names. Why don't you tell us some of the people that you name in the book?
Well, I just want to say, too, it's not a tell-all. I left a lot of things out for a lot of good reasons.
So it's a tell-a-lot.
It's a tell-some. It's not even a lot.
Okay.
It's just a small part. There are the names that you all know. There's the Ja Rules and the Vin Diesels, the Shaquilles, I don't know, whoever.
And you're saying you had sex with all the men that you just named?
Yes.
So why did you write this book?
Well, initially when I started writing the book, it was for my own purpose. I had gone through a lot. because the book isn't about sex and it's not about hip hop and it's not about rappers. It's about my journey from being an abused child to being raped as a young child to being, going through spousal abuse, a young mother, and then getting into that and then having to, almost dying with a drug overdose. And then once I began to heal myself, close to about 4 years ago, I really had to figure out what happened to me in order for me to heal. I had to admit it to myself, what I did.
But you had to know that naming the names and talking about the sexual exploits is what was gonna put the book, at the top of New York's best-selling list. I mean, it's number 5 on the best-selling list in New York Times right now.
Yeah, it is, and we're number 3 at the Washington Post, and we're also in the Wall Street Journal and all major markets. But honestly, that part was a surprise to me. And I didn't know that. All I knew was that I had to tell the stories that were relevant to my life, and everyone is named. And it's funny to me how everyone is so concerned about naming the celebrities, but no one is concerned about me naming the man that raped me when I was 13 and how his life is going to be now. You know what I mean? And so it just shows me that we're in a celebrity hypnotized society.
But you were hypnotized by the celebrity
exactly,
at once,
which
so
is the
you can
whole point of the
understand
book.
why people are so into
exactly,
it.
which is what's so ironic and so wonderful, because that's the point of the book. Just being hypnotized by that and just really wanting a place to belong and needing a family, needing love, and thinking sex and love are equated. And that's why there's a lot of sex in the book. And each time I have sex with someone, you'll read in the book where I say, I just loved him.
Why do you say that? Because I noticed that. I noticed that you would have sex with this guy and you said that you loved him.
Yeah.
What was that emotion that you were feeling, and why would you say something
Exactly,
like that?
because in my head I did. Because
because in the book she says that she'd have sex with somebody and then they'd get up and then they'd leave, or they'd tell you to leave. So how could you equate that with love?
I was never told to leave. I just think that, years with people, there's hardly anyone, there's a few, maybe 1 or 2 in there where it was uncomfortable and we separated. Jay-Z was like that, Dr. Dre was like that, where you just know you're better off being acquaintances and not lovers and you stay friends afterwards. There are people in there that I stayed with for years, just off and on. But everyone would have to go. No one lived where I lived. They had lives other places. And so,
have you upset people from writing this book?
I haven't heard anything from anyone. The people that are most upset will be my mother and my ex, because they were the most brutal to me. And I was honest about that. Brutality, and that upsets them.
So these rappers aren't upset that you wrote about them?
No, they're fine, because there are so many things that I left out. The things that I got a lot of calls.
So if you ran into Usher, or you ran into Jay-Z, or you ran into, they're like, hey, Corinne, it's cool?
Well, we haven't been cool for years, you know what I mean? So it's not like I've had friendships all this time. These are people that I haven't spoken to, with the exception of Usher, who I haven't spoken to in years. And so when we do see each other, and we do, 4 Seasons brunch, and you just kind of pass each other, and you do one of these, and you just keep going.
Because I'll admit, if somebody wrote something about me in a book, I'd be pissed off.
Yeah, people wrote things about me in songs. So I've been pissed off before. I've been written about in magazines, that were lies. And I've been pissed off before too. So I know how it feels. But the difference is that the things that were written about me weren't the truth. And this is the truth. And I tell them, as I tell everyone, if your name is in this book and you see something that you don't like, then you shouldn't have done it.
So do you think that you wrote this book because of revenge, out of revenge?
No, see, revenge is something that happens when people are miserable and upset and
But weren't
bitter.
you miserable and upset
Not when
and
I wrote
bitter?
this book. Not when I wrote this book.
Corinne, I have to disagree with you, because when I read the book, you were saying that you're really upset that, that you were down and out, that these were the guys that you would go out with and wine and dine and spend a lot of money and hang out.
Yeah.
And then you had
But
your
I
rock
still
bottom.
have that lifestyle now.
No,
That
but I'm
lifestyle
saying,
hasn't changed.
but I'm talking about your rock bottom. And you hit a rock bottom where you were homeless,
Yeah.
living in the car with your son,
Absolutely.
freezing to death, and
Absolutely.
using jackets to stay
But
warm.
all of that was my fault.
No, but
That
I'm saying,
wasn't their
but what I'm
fault.
saying is you called these guys and said, I need some help.
Yeah.
And none
they
of them
said
helped
no.
you. None of them helped you.
The same man who wrote me a $10,000 check on our first date wouldn't help me. Everything that happened to me was my fault. I did it to myself.
But then
I
why
allowed
name names?
people-
If there's no anger, why name the names?
Why not? It's just the truth. And so now that I've healed, it feels right to say, you know what? Let's not give this a pretty name anymore. Let's not say I was hanging out. Let's not say I wasn't. I was prostituting myself and selling myself for a lot less than I'm actually worth. You know,
Well, we're going to talk about that some more.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I want to hear from you guys out there, because I know you're going, Tyra, say this. Tyra, ask her that. So we're going to hear from you guys.
Also, here is a clip of Nicki Minaj basically giving props not only to Corinne Steffens, but all of Lil Wayne's muses who, essentially influenced his music, and they're the reasons why all of his songs hit the way that they do, because of the muses that inspired it.
I was one of the first people to be shitted on the internet, on social media, like non-fucking stop. Every day I would go on, and it was some new story, made up story, or bad picture, or it wasn't acceptable to have surgery at all or anything. Even though, and at that time, I had never had surgery. I had ass shots, which till this day I realize, even what I did, and even with me not consulting with anyone to do something like that, how insane that was. Like, it's not that you go to a doctor, a professional person. No, it's some random person.
Yeah, shorty in the Bronx.
Comes in. I was in Atlanta
Queens.
at the time. And actually what happened was I kept on being around Wayne and them. And at that time, Wayne, he always talking about big booties and all. Wayne would have like a new chick in the studio every session. So it was always a new big booty.
Creative support. That's what I like to call it.
A new big booty there.
A muse.
Right. Actually, yes. Actually, it was. They were his muses.
You like to look to the side and see something with some ass sitting there while you're trying to come up with a line.
That's right. And yes, I want to make sure I don't downplay those women, because they have a big part in the journey of a rapper's career. You know what I'm saying? Because when they are out there, they would give him that fuel. Them smiling, them listening. He would do stuff and then just see organically what they would respond to, right? All of those things. So they were his muses, but I just was around them all the time, and I was like sister. I was like the little sister with Wayne and Mac and all these boys, J Mills and Gutta and all of them. And all I would hear them talking about is big butts. And I didn't feel complete or good enough, good as those girls, because I'm like, oh my God, this is what you're supposed to look like in the rap culture, and I don't look like that. And now.
But that was you telling yourself that, and not anyone else saying that to you.
No, yeah, they never told me that. Well, no, I'm lying. I think they said stuff sometimes jokingly.
Jokingly.
But to a young girl or up-and-coming rapper or anything like that, when it's from someone like Lil Wayne, it matters, so even if they're joking, they don't know that the person that is there in that room with them is not finding it funny.
So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was really fun to make, and I want to leave you with some tips on not just how to be a muse like for someone else, but how to be like the master of your own image and be not only a source of a muse for yourself, like inspire yourself, but be able to hold that space to give to the world. I realize that when it comes to YouTube and stuff, a lot of people, they care more about like views than like really connecting with people that care about your message and not just like rage baiting and stuff, which that stuff is fun too. Like everyone does it. But on my channel, I really like connecting with people and knowing that I'm leaving a lasting impact on people. And that's really what being a muse is. Being unforgettable. Being someone where if someone picks up on your air, your vibe, your energy, it's like your own little world, and they can just explore you and figure you out. And it's a really fun thing to do with yourself and to allow other people to do with you. So one of my first tips is tell your own story before someone else does. And when it comes to like models being scouted or, like even the whole Diddy situation, Cassie is such a beautiful woman. She had, a pretty talented voice. She didn't need him to become, well, she wasn't really that famous, but based off how famous she was, like the couple songs that people do know, she didn't need him for that. She could have did that on her own. And that's just something you want to keep in mind. Don't wait for someone to uncover you when you already know that you're a jewel, So another tip is don't be afraid to, allow, and a lot of times being a muse, it almost feels like shadow work because you can't fake it. You really have to be present in the moment. So don't be afraid to use the things that bother you or the things you're not that proud of to inspire your art. I know on social media, a lot of people like to present their best foot forward, but you'd be surprised being vulnerable, being authentic, and putting yourself out there, even though if it's not the popular thing to say, how far that will get with people that are actually listening to you. So never be afraid to do that. And this is one of the most important ones to me. Learn the tools of power. So earlier, when I was talking about like certain, I think I was talking about Tina Turner, where it wasn't just her husband that was abusing her, it was the other masculine powers at play, like the music industry and other men that had her signing these contracts and stuff like that, where it's more like, I like to call it like a masculine container, which basically implies that feminine energy can't exist without masculine energy. You know, one encases the other and allows the other to flow, and one is the structure that I kind of think about it like I don't know how old you guys are, but back in the day, when a computer or like a TV was on standby, it would go into like this automatic screen, and the TV would turn into like a little box, and there would be a little ball bouncing back and forth in like the box. So think of the ball as feminine energy, this chaotic, you never know where it's going to go. It seems crazy, but it has its own balance going on. Like if you throw a ball at a certain angle, even if it goes crazy all over the room, you understand like at the velocity and at the angle of which you threw it, at the momentum of which it fell, you could kind of predict which way it's going to go. And that's kind of how feminine energy is. It feels crazy and fiery and flighty, but it has its own system as well. And the masculine energy is that structure, that safety, that security. And you don't necessarily need a man. It does help if you do have a good father figure, a good grandfather figure. I talked about this in my video on how to social climb for introverts. And if you don't really like socializing with people, be grandfathered into something. Instead of, going to a party and trying to talk to everyone and get everyone's Instagram and draining your energy, find whoever planned the party. Find the owner of the building. Find someone who can keep you connected without draining your energy. So building these own masculine structures within yourself allows your own feminine energy to flow, where you don't really need that structure from someone else unless it's actually beneficial to you. So my fourth tip is going to be, and this kind of goes into the last one, set creative boundaries. Now, a muse is often assessed at will, and a master is selective and intentional. So if you're saying no to people who only want to use your image in ways that make them feel good about themselves, that is going to help you in the long run. Don't and there are some women who have done this, who have overcome it. I think about Marilyn Monroe, how she did a nude photo shoot, like completely bare nude, before she became an actress and before she became famous, and it kind of came back to bite her in the butt. Now, if you're a sex symbol, that's different. But if you plan on being, taken seriously, and you're, different type of woman, don't let anyone ruin your image. I even think about Ruby Rose, how she was so beautiful. She was already in all these music videos, and DDG convinced her, even though she did it on her own accord. But I'm just saying, if your boyfriend is an entrepreneur and he's always talking about, oh, do this, do that, and every other girl is doing it, I can see someone with an undeveloped brain falling into that trap. So she started the OnlyFans, and now it's like a part of her image. She doesn't do anything explicit, but she's forever the OnlyFans girl. And that's why people don't listen to when she speaks, unfortunately. So that's something you definitely want to take care of ahead of time. And my last and final tip is going to be, don't be afraid to reimagine your identity and your image and your impact and your audience. Even with me, when it comes to YouTube, I started this channel talking about like race and stuff, and then I get into femininity and spirituality and purity politics and news and the media, and I like being able to talk on different topics. Some of my subscribers like certain things, some subscribers like other things. And if you're still listening to this video, please comment what type of videos you like by me the most, so that I can have an idea of what you guys like. I would really appreciate that a lot. But yeah, don't be afraid to think outside the box. You'd be surprised what you can do if you just give yourself that freedom. So yeah, this was really fun to make. I hope you guys have a beautiful day. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.